Finally, I get to report on Esxence 2023 to you guys in this video. I'm going to let you know all of my discoveries at Esxence or during Esxence. I know this is a video that's been due to air quite a while ago, but with health issues and things like that, I wasn't able to sit down and fully embrace this video, as it's going to require a lot of referring back to clips and photos that I shot during Esxence. So if you're curious to learn about brands that I discovered, fragrances that I discovered during Esxence in 2023, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today we're talking about Esxence 2023, all the brands and fragrances that I discovered today in one video. And the way I'm going to do this is shoot per brand as a separate video, and then during editing it'll all come together. And basically it'll either have photos that I shot during Esxence and also real clips that are vertical rather than horizontal, and then I think I shot some that are also horizontal. So you're gonna see some footage in there that's vertical, upright, like a reel for Instagram or a short on YouTube, and then you're gonna see some footage that's normal, and then of course some photos as well over my, what I think about the fragrances and the brands themselves. You can run through the info box and click through different brands you want to hear about, and I'm not going to elaborate too much on each brand, just a little bit about each brand, and they're going to be very quick clips on each discovery and things like that. And some of them I might not even talk about the actual fragrances themselves. It might be the brand or something new with the brand and things like that. And of course, as I said, this is a video that you can click through for different brands or watch the entire video because maybe you want to hear about all of the fragrances and brands I discovered. So let me get to the first brand. I'm going to talk to you about Thomas de Monaco. So I first discovered Thomas de Monaco back in April of 2022 with Raw Gold. Of course, we featured Raw Gold in my kit, Scent Club kit number 4. But Thomas de Monaco has 2 more fragrances coming out soon, which I got to smell, and those should be dropping very, very soon. I'm not allowed to really say about each of the fragrances because the fragrances are under wraps until they actually make their debut. But I believe these are going to debut sometime in September or October, so they're just around the corner. But if you're a fan of Raw Gold, you're probably going to like what you're going to smell coming out from Thomas de Monaco. There's some good stuff coming. But 2 fragrances, and also he's redone the bottles. So the bottles are going to be redone going forward, and I believe they'll be redone with the launch of the 2 new fragrances. So that actually is really, really a great news about this brand, and I think it's going to be great. There's also something else about Raw Gold that I'm not supposed to say, unfortunately, because it's kind of under wraps currently, but there's going to be some things that are coming up about Raw Gold as well. So that is the first brand I'm talking about. Then going to the house of Parfums de NICOLAI. I actually stopped at their booth briefly on my walk through the show, and I noticed that they now have these large, which I thought 200 ml, but looks like they're 250 ml bottles now of their fragrances, which is great. Those of you that like a lot of juice, these are going to be perfect. Unfortunately, I didn't see anything new fragrance-wise launching from the house, but they had just launched a coffee fragrance several months prior, so perhaps that's the latest, or they might have something else. Unfortunately, I didn't see what new is coming out from this house, but always a fan of Parfums de NICOLAI. They have great fragrances, and I think they're definitely worth checking out over and over again to see what is coming out. So one of the brands that I discovered at this event, I should say I didn't discover at the event. In fact, I discovered the brand at JACQUES in Paris in March before the event. And during my meet and greet that I had over there, it was one of the brands I highlighted. It's a brand from the Netherlands called FUGAZZI. And everything from this house I really loved. The prices were not too high. They seem to have pretty simplistic bottles, and all the fragrances seem really, really great. So I'm waiting for them to launch or debut here in the States, but as a brand, I think this is a great house. If you haven't discovered them, you should definitely discover them. All the fragrances smelled great. In fact, I was surprised at how much I liked a lot of their fragrances. I wouldn't call their fragrances like uber daring and things like that, so they're very wearable fragrances, but everyone smelled really, really great, and I loved what I smelled. So I smelled them and discovered them at Jovoy, and I got to meet the brand at XERJOFF, so that was a great thing with XERJOFF and discovering the actual people behind the brand. But knowing about the brand by the time I got to the XERJOFF show and you know, learning more about them themselves. So I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, if you still don't know what XERJOFF is an annual event that typically happens around March, April in Milan, Italy on niche perfumery. So it's a 4-day event, 2 days for industry, and then 2 additional days for industry and open to the public as well, and typically happens Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Saturdays and Sundays it's open to the public, and the public can go. So if you've ever wanted to go, you can attend on those days. But you'll find very new niche houses there, brand spanking new ones that haven't really made an appearance anywhere, smaller houses. But you won't find brands like Amouage. They don't go to these events because they're much larger niche houses. You might see some presence of something like XERJOFF, but they basically kind of do something a bit behind the scenes. But Tiziana Terenzi will be there, and of course smaller brands like Atelier des Ors goes, État Libre d'Orange goes, and so on, similar brands like that. But you won't find Frederic Malle, you won't find L'Artisan, Penhaligon's at these kind of shows. So if you ever wanted to go, I think it's a fun event to go to learn about perfume and niche perfumery. And again, as I said, it happens typically March, April every year, sometime around there. It depends on, it kind of falls actually just before Easter, so I think Easter is like a week after usually XERJOFF, something like that. But let's move on. I discovered 2 new fragrances from SORA DORA. If you guys don't remember SORA DORA, I've done a video on SORA DORA, and they have 2 new fragrances coming out in 2 white bottles. So they're white bottles. One of them is called Mallow, and another one is called Gianni. And one of them I really enjoyed. I think it was a Gourmand. And then another one was kind of a violet focused fragrance. So I really like this house. I'm looking forward to the launch of this house, and we'll see what happens with these 2 new fragrances. But if you're a fan of this house, and let me know what you think about them. It's a SORA DORA, and they're from France. But moving on to Jacques Fath. Jacques Fath had 2 fragrances that they were debuting. Although last year during XERJOFF, which took place in June because of the pandemic, they did debut Vetiver Gris, which was launched by the time we got to XERJOFF this year. And then they were also launching Jasmine de Toscane this year as well. Both of the fragrances were created by Jean-Christophe Herrel, the guy who created Aventus. So they also debuted the brand new eau de parfum version of L'Iris de Fath, which is the more affordable version of L'Iris de Fath, which is parfum concentration and enormously priced, very, very expensive fragrance. So I think the eau de parfum version might even actually smell a little better than the parfum version, and I think it's going to be, definitely will be much more affordable for anyone who's into iris fragrances. I think you're going to really enjoy this fragrance.
Hi, I'm Patrice. I'm perfumer at MAISON in Paris, and today I introduce you L'Iris de Fath eau de parfum, which is a rework of the Extrait. We launched the Extrait 5 years ago, and now we are very proud of this new release. It was important for us, for Jacques Fath and me, to give to the passionate about perfumes a new version, more affordable in terms of price, because we know people who love perfumes love L'Iris de Fath have to have something more affordable, because it's a very a formula with a lot of oils inside, so it gives a totally incredible price. And we tried with Rania to have something with the same quality, and it's thanks to the new raw materials from Firmenich with a totally incredible oils, we create the new one. So I hope you liked it, you will like it, and I'm impatient to have your opinion about it.
And if you haven't tried the Vetiver Gris from Jacques Fath, I think it's definitely a great, fresh, bit nutty take on vetiver. And then also the Jasmine de Toscane is also really, really great. I think definitely worth checking out. So I don't know this particular house very well. Francesca DELL'ORO had a great Chypre fragrance called Else. Was created by Nicolai Marine. I believe that's his fragrance. I quickly stopped at their booth and smelled this fragrance, which was great. And then also quickly stopped at Spirit of Kings. I don't speak too much about this house, although I've done one or two videos or mentioned a few of their fragrances in videos. They had a great patchouli fragrance called Notion. I don't know if you guys have tried this house, but I think it's definitely a great patchouli fragrance, so might have to circle back to trying that. Also, a friend took me to a house called HARB'S, and they have a fragrance called Musk Royal. These were quick stops at these booths, but HARB'S Musk Royal smelled fantastic, and I don't know where I can get this fragrance, but definitely want to circle back to this particular fragrance to see if I really like the way it smells. But moving forward to a brand called Anthologie by Lucien FERRERO. Now, this is a brand that was originally called Lucien FERRERO, and they launched in 2019, but they have changed their name to Anthologie by Lucien FERRERO. And then there's two fragrances that launched from this house. They already have like 5 or 6 fragrances. So the two new fragrances are called C'est Mutine, C'est Rebelle, and I believe the one I really liked was C'est Mutine. And both of the fragrances are created by Lucien FERRERO along with Jean-Claude ELLENA, which I got to meet at this event, and great to have a chat with them. In fact, I shot a video with Jean-Claude ELLENA along with Lucien FERRERO discussing these two new fragrances, and unfortunately Jean-Claude ELLENA spoke really quietly, so the video did not turn out. But the two fragrances and this house is definitely worth trying if you don't know this house. It's a sister house to Laboratorio Olfativo, so I think the fragrances are quite nice if you don't know their fragrances. So that evening, the first day, this is all on the first day, there was an event at the XERJOFF boutique in Milan, and they launched the collection of fragrances called the Chemi as part of XERJOFF, and they redid the bottles. I think maybe perhaps the fragrances are all redone as well, and they did an event at their boutique and launching these new fragrances under XERJOFF with the beautiful, beautiful bottles. The bottles for the Chemi line that are under XERJOFF are amazing. And then they launched Astaral, and they launched a fragrance called Aridal, which I really enjoyed Astaral from the Chemi line. Aridal, on the other hand, was a bit boring to me. I didn't really love it that much. I mean, it's totally wearable and, you know, enjoyable. But for me, Astaral was the winner out of those two. And then I also sampled Holism, and it was a great tobacco fragrance, which I need to get my nose on. But we smelled the entire collection during this event, and was fantastic. So NISHANE on that same night had an event for industry. They relaunched some fragrances under X. So there's Hachivat X, there's Ani X, there's Wulong Cha X. These were really, really great takes on the original fragrances. Hachivat and Wulong Cha X were created by Julien RASQUINET, who I got to meet at this event. Amazing, one of my favorite perfumers, and he actually did a great job on these two fragrances, updating them, modernizing, well, not modernizing them, just as an anniversary thing for NISHANE being around for 10 years. And then there was also Ani X, which was, of course, redone by Cécile Zarokian, which was also great. It took the original vanillic spicy fragrance into a bit of a lemony fresh direction. So great fragrances. Hopefully I'll do a video on the entire X collection very soon. In fact, I've done video featuring some of these new fragrances in a video of updates on some fragrances. You can go search the names of the fragrances and you'll discover them. I reviewed a fragrance by a perfumer under Zoologist Perfumes perfumer Pia Long called Chipmunk. So I somehow got to meet her at the event at XERJOFF, and Pia Long, I thought she did a great job with Chipmunk for Zoologist Perfumes. This nutty kind of fruity fragrance was perfect, I felt. So she was at XERJOFF and she debuted a brand called BOUJEE. I think that's how you say the name. And there was a couple of really great fragrances in there. I think the entire line was pretty solid, but one or two of them were really stand out. So I'd like to circle back to those fragrances and discover them further and see how I can get my nose on them. I think they were just making their debut at XERJOFF, so that was great to meet a perfumer that I like the fragrance from. It's one of my favorite fragrances, Chipmunk, from Zoologist, so it was great to have been able to meet Pia Long and you know, the launch of her new brand. So Meo Fusciuni is a brand that is not very widely, you know, represented here in the States, but it was great for me to stop at their booth, which was beautiful. You'll see in some of the video that I have here how great it was designed, and I'd like to dig into this house a lot further and discover some of their fragrances. I have a review on the channel for Little Song, but I'd like to you know, further discuss some of their fragrances like Narcotico, Spirito, L'Oblio, Varanasi, Encre du Temps, Sony. So those are some of the fragrances I got to check out, but there's a vast catalog of fragrances from Meo Fusciuni. Are you guys fans of this house? Are you do you have a favorite from this house? Let me know. Put a comment down below so I can find out. So Le Galion is a brand that I really admire, although I'm having a hard time finding the brand. Well, although, yeah, no stores really sell them, but Neiman Marcus sells them online. And recently, later last year, I did a video on the house as well. So if you're curious to learn about Le Galion, you can go catch that. But they launched a new floral fragrance called L'Astre, I think that's how you say it. And really a wonderful floral, feminine-leaning fragrance in the most beautiful Art Deco bottle. Really, really love that bottle. In fact, I think the bottles are all from Le Galion are going to change over to this bottle. Don't quote me on that, but I believe they're redoing the bottles. In fact, they've launched 2 fragrances now with their new, most beautiful Art Deco bottles. So hopefully it'll be all converted over, because those bottles are so gorgeous and definitely collectible, beautiful works of art kind of bottles. I'm all about presentation, and I really love it when you know, a fragrance bottle draws me in, or the presentation or packaging draws me in, and then what's inside the bottles are even, you know, more exciting with the juice and things like that. So moving on to Maison Violet, got to see the entire brand there, and this was their first time at XERJOFF. They didn't have any new fragrances that they were debuting at this event, but it was great to see the entire brand, the 3 partners who I'd met Anthony many times. He's come to the studio, we've done videos here, and then of course I met one of the other partners in Paris at an event there, and finally I got to meet the 3rd partner. So we'll see what happens with the brand going forward. A lot of their fragrances are created by Nathalie Lorson, and of course I'm looking forward to seeing what else launches from the brand in the near future. So fast forward to another brand, Le Jardin Retrouve. They had a most amazing booth, with beautiful decoration, and you know, their fragrances are pretty good as well. So I'd like to dig further into this house and discover more of their fragrances. But they have, their new launch was Osmant Li Wan, I believe that's how you say it. Osmonth Li Wan. And then, of course, last year's launch was Mousse Arashiyama. Who's a fan of this house, and what are your favorite fragrances from this house? Do let me know. Put a comment down below so I can find out. But I got to smell Steve Martin Paris fragrances. Seemed pretty complex and very pricey, so I spent a little time there, but I didn't spend too much time. Fragrances were all in some kind of a suitcase, the way they were, you know, presenting, which was kind of interesting because it's, I believe it's a travel theme brand, so very interesting. But moving on to Atelier Materi, they have a new fragrance called Cuir, which I got to sample before Esxence at Jovoy once again. Wonderful, wonderful leather fragrance with this very, you know, ozonic touch of violet leaves. It's a really beautiful smelling fragrance. It does remind me of something like Tuscan leather and ombre leather and things like that, but I felt like Atelier Materi's Cuir is super fantastic. The way it smells, and it wears just beautifully. So I'll report back on that fragrance very soon. And I got to meet the perfumer behind that fragrance, and I think she's done one or two other fragrances for Atelier Materi as well. Her name was, or is, Celine Pedriel. But if you're a fan of Atelier Materi, let me know. Put a comment down so I can find out. And if you've sampled Cuir, do let me know as well. So moving on to Nuit Nomade. You guys know this brand? I've done a video on the house and also featured one of the fragrances from Nuit Nomade, Jardin de Misfa, in a video, in Scent Club kit number 4, the last kit which we've sold out. They have 2 new fragrances, Sugar Leather and Love at First Sight. Great, great fragrances. Love at First Sight is a fresh mimosa and lilac fragrance. It smells like spring. If you like the idea of that fragrance, check that out. Sugar Leather is a leather with like a gourmand edge to it, kind of sugary, honeyed sweetness. A kind of a leather take on something like Wajan from Parfums Marley. So both of the fragrances were great. I really, really love this house. Really great. The fragrances are not uber expensive. They're very, very unique and original smells that are definitely very, very wearable. So these 2 fragrances were quite nice and definitely worth checking out. So Atelier d'Orange has a new fragrance called Sous le Pont Mirabeau. I sampled it really quickly. It smelled kind of fresh, but I need to come back to it because their booth was quite busy every time I was there, and so I want to kind of circle back and check out this fragrance. I really love Atelier d'Orange. I think it's one of my favorite niche houses, and once again, not overpriced fragrances. I mean, they do have a more expensive collection, but a lot of the fragrances are definitely not overpriced for niche fragrances. So I discovered and sampled fragrances from Alma. Are you guys familiar with this Spanish house? Boy, their fragrances are uber complex. The owner of the brand, or actually the perfumer, is the father, and then the owner's son, or the father's, you know, the son of the perfumer is part of the brand, and he showed me a lot of the fragrances. Very, very complex fragrances. Are you guys familiar with Alma? Do let me know. Put a comment down below so I can find out. But I sampled their fragrances: Green Crown, Eva Vic, Bella Cecilia, Munar Valley. Definitely those were my favorites from the house from what I sampled, but uber complex. I feel like the fragrances need a lot of time to really dig into them and appreciate them and wear them and things like that. So hopefully I'll end up doing a video on that house. If you're a fan of the house, let me know. Put a comment down so I can find out. Moving on to a Sicilian house called Narcisse Taormina. Great house. I've featured one of their fragrances and videos on the channel in the past, but I got to discover Montevenere, Zuccara and Zuccarata. I'm sorry, Zagara and Zuccarata. I believe Zagara is the Orange Blossom or Neroli fragrance, and one of those was a really delicious almondy fragrance. Do you guys enjoy almondy fragrances? But hopefully I'll do a video on the house soon as well. But once again, really simplistic bottles, really eye-catching presentation for sure, and some great smells in the collection. I don't think they're very expensive either. So moving on to Lorenzo Pezzaglia. I've spoken about this house quite a bit on the channel. I've done videos on the fragrances and things like that. They had a ton of people at their booth. It was always very, very busy, and I got to sample Cherry Ink, another cherry fragrance. There's so many cherry fragrances out there. Will they do a pistachio fragrance, since this is the year of pistachio? Is it the year of pistachio? Are there more pistachio fragrances coming out? But yeah, the house is got a lot of hype around them, and they make really intense fragrances, and so most likely we'll do another video on this house very, very soon. Parfums de Elmar is a brand that I discovered for the first time. I sampled 5 of their fragrances, really enjoyed Zaya in the green bottle, but I didn't have too much time to spend with them. Also, Lila Nour Parfums, I have done a video on this house in the past, and I got to meet with some of the folks behind the brand, and they gave me a preview on the entire collection. They do have a great vetiver as well that I discovered during this visit, and hopefully I'll report back on this fragrance very soon. So this is an interesting house I discovered, Hormone Paris. Very interesting and unique concept for fragrances, and I got to smell every single fragrance, and hopefully I'll circle back and do a video on this house as well. They had some fragrances that I thought were similar to other fragrances, which I don't like that idea of fragrances that remind me too much of another fragrance. Sure, it could have an inspiration or something, so I'd have to test them out and smell to see that they maybe hint at it a little bit and change direction and things like that. But very unique concept, and I think very colorful presentation for Hormone Paris. Another brand that I discovered last year at Jovoy, in September last year, I discovered a brand called Eternal Journey. So you can probably see the bottles behind me, can you? Anyway, their bottles had these round caps on top. There's 3 fragrances by Eternal Journey: Sunrise to Sunset, Sunset to Midnight, Midnight to Sunrise. My favorite of the 3 is Sunset to Midnight, and then I also enjoy Midnight to Sunrise, and hopefully I'm going to do a video on these 3 fragrances very, very soon. The brand is founded by a DJ who DJs really big gigs and things like that, and so he's done a collection of fragrances created by Firmenich perfumers, and one of the perfumers is boy, I hate it when I'm drawing a blank with the names. It's anyway, it's 2 Firmenich perfumers, but one of them is Hamid Muradi Kashani, and I forgot the other perfumer. But a great house that I discovered last year, really highlighting that brand, and then I circled back to the brand Eternal Journey at Jovoy back in March, and then the brand was at XERJOFF, so that I got to do a nice, they did a nice presentation, walked me through the entire collection and the concept of the brand and things like that. If you've discovered this house, let me know. Put a comment down below so I can find out. So Parfums Dusita, who is in my Scent Club kit number 5 now with Fleur de Lolita, one of my favorite green floral fragrances. If you haven't checked that kit out, do. It's linked in the info box. It has just launched Rosarine. Rosarine was a beautiful rose-themed fragrance. I got to smell it there. It smelled fantastic, and hopefully I can get my hands on a bottle and circle back to you guys and let you know more about it. But she had also told me while I was at XERJOFF that she was pregnant. Hi guys, it's Sebastian, and I'm here with the very pregnant Pisara of Dusita, and we're previewing the new Dusita fragrance, Rosarine. Yes. Tell me a little bit about Rosarine.
Rosarine is the fragrance that I wanted to be the queen of rose. Yes, and I was inspired by the time I went to Bagatelle Garden in Paris.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and you know what, Sebastian, if you go there now, you can smell 200 different roses and you can touch them as well.
Wow, that's beautiful. So what are the notes besides rose in here?
So there are patchouli, a lot of incense, a little bit of amberry touch, and a touch of chocolate.
Oh wow. So is there anything green? Because I do get some green stuff in here.
Yes, it is. It's a touch of rosemary and also bergamot.
So I'm getting the stems of the rose.
Yes.
So the rose is a bit fresh.
Yes.
Yes.
And on the skin, Sebastian is gonna shine even much better because it's gonna be like the rose after the rain.
Oh wow. So is it out now, this fragrance?
In 1 month.
So it's coming out in 1 month.
On 15th of May.
Oh, 15th of May. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, great.
21st of May.
21st of May. Okay. So coming out soon, it's Rosarine from the House of Parfums Lucita. And as I said, the very pregnant Pisara is here with me. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye. If you follow me on Instagram, we did a quick video together mentioning that she was pregnant, and so yeah, Rosarine was smelling great, so I'm looking forward to checking it out further, and then come back to you guys and let you know all about Rosarine from Parfums Lucita. Let me know if you're a fan of the house. Let me know if you've gotten Scent Club Kit number 5 and what you think about Fleur de Lalita if you hadn't smelled it in the past. But another great fragrance I discovered, well, I think it was one of my favorite fragrances of the whole show. It's Rubini's Eau de Nature. Did you guys sample this, or have you familiar with the house? They don't have too many fragrances. They have maybe 4, I believe. But this was a green, super green fragrance with a chamomile, feature in the fragrance as well. It smelled really, really great and green. I love it. Love the idea of this fragrance, and it really stood out as one of my favorite discoveries during the show. So it's Rubini Eau de Nature. Great fragrance. Really loved it, and hopefully I'll report to you guys about it very, very soon. But Step Aboard, which I've done a video with in the past, if you don't know this house, they have fragrances that are in like spray paint canisters. Their bottles are very unique, and they have just previewed a collection of fragrances inspired by Chicago. So I think they're just now rolling out those fragrances, or they should be towards the end of the year. And it was always great to catch up with the folks behind Step Aboard. Let me know if you're a fan of the house, and if you're curious to learn more about Step Aboard, I have a video with the owner of the brand on the channel. Just search Step Aboard. Another great discovery during XERJOFF 2023 was the latest fragrance from Essential Parfums. Essential Parfums is a great niche house with fragrances that are under $100. The new fragrance is called Patchouli Mania, and I believe it's created by Fabrice Pellegrin. Really, if you're a lover of patchouli, you got to get your nose on this. And this is going to be under $100, and it smells fantastic. I had a really small lab sample, and I wore it. It has great trail. It is not your typical chocolate cakey patchouli, but it did have some touches of that, but also some touches of greenness, which I really, really loved. So that is going to be a hit, a great patchouli fragrance, and hopefully it'll launch very, very soon. I think it's on track to launch in the fall or autumn, so it'll be great to check out that fragrance and start wearing it, because I already wore through my entire lab sample that I had received, and now I'm looking forward to that patchouli fragrance. So I've spoken quite a bit about I profumi di Firenze on the channel, but more earlier on this channel rather than recently. But it was great to see that house over at XERJOFF. I had never seen them in XERJOFF before, and I always visit their store in Florence when I go to Florence for a PT, and so it was great to see them and experience some of their fragrances and things like that. I don't think they were launching anything. Oh, they did launch some things new, but I didn't really pay attention to what they were launching. I was just getting caught up with the owner of that brand, which has been around forever. If you ever visit Florence, definitely go to their store, which is right near the David statue in the main square in Florence. A great collection of fragrances, so definitely worth visiting. So I already mentioned the Anthologies brand with Lucien FERRERO, which is connected to Laboratorio Olfativo. So Laboratorio Olfativo launched 3 fragrances: Miss You, Till, and also Pompelmo. Great fragrances, really wonderful. Pompelmo smelled really, really great. Pompelmo is in the Citrus collection created by Jean-Claude ELLENA, and he's done probably 4 for that line, and this is the 5th one, and it smelled fantastic, really great. My favorite is the Mandarin next to the Blood Orange, and then now the Pompelmo smells really, really great as well. The other 2, Miss You and Till, were in the regular collection, and I believe those were created by Luca Maffei. So great. I really love this house, and thankfully store here, Ministry of Scent sells the brand, so it's easy for me to get their fragrances, which is really, really wonderful. They're also connected to the house Maison Tahiti, and I thought for sure they were going to launch a new collection at Maison Tahiti. I, for some reason, had the feeling they're going to launch a caramel collection, but they hadn't launched anything. So maybe by Pitti in the fall they're going to launch some new fragrances. We shall see. But the new fragrances from Laboratorio Olfattivo are really great. 3 new ones landing or launching soon. So it was great to meet with Catherine Omai at the event. Catherine Omai I got to meet, I believe, in 2019 at Pitti, and she had launched Contagious Gold. Now she has 2 more fragrances, Contagious Green and Contagious Rose, but I believe Contagious Gold is probably the best. I gotta circle back to the green, but I also enjoyed Contagious Rose. So hopefully maybe I'll do a video on this house in the near future, but it was wonderful to have visited with her and check out the 3 fragrances that she has. I also got to meet with the brand Toscovat, really a great booth they had set up. Very dramatic, and the fragrances are very, very indie, but wonderful collection of fragrances that they had, and a beautiful presentation for all of the fragrances, which are created by the main person behind the brand. So it was great to discover the fragrances and learn about the stories and things like that from this house, which seem pretty dramatic with some of the inspirations that go into these fragrances. So hopefully I'll end up doing some more content in regards to Toscovat in the future. But also discovered a brand called Sherigan, which actually had discovered the brand at Javoy, and it was great to see them at Esxence. It's a house that was older, folded and brought back, and somehow I was told it's with some folks that own the different company. I don't know if that is 100% correct, but they had a limited edition fragrance that I fell head over heels for, but sadly I don't remember what it is, and I'd like to get my hands on it, but unfortunately I don't know what it is called, which is sad. It's killing me, but I think some of the fragrances are really, really great from this house, so I'd like to circle back and perhaps do a video on this house as well. But another house that I had discovered at a store in Paris, I believe these fragrances are selling at Printemps upstairs on the perfume hall in that beauty actual standalone store, Printemps in Paris. It's Carlotta Ray. Carlotta Ray's bottles are so beautiful. Really nice, smaller bottles, but very art deco, really beautifully designed bottles. And some of their fragrances are really, really great. So hopefully I'll report on some of these fragrances from Carlotta Ray as well very soon. But also the brand's fragrances are not overly expensive. So really, I think affordable fragrances, because when I first discovered them at Printemps in Paris, I thought, wow, these are beautiful bottles and not very expensive. So definitely worth checking out, especially if you like beautiful presentations, because these boxes open up like this, and the actual bottle kind of comes out like this when you're opening it up. So I thought that was kind of cool with Carlotta Ray. Moving on to Père Noir, I believe it's a Swiss house. Another great collection of fragrances from 3 I believe it was 3 partners that have launched this house, and there were a few that were pretty stand out for this house as well, so definitely worth checking out. It was great to finally meet the folks behind JACQUES and smell some of their newest creations. That was also a great thing, and I think I'm going to be doing an updated video on JACQUES fragrances very soon, so stay tuned for JACQUES. If you guys don't know JACQUES, they are a Japanese brand, and their fragrances also are not overly expensive, so they have a huge variety of fragrances. My favorite from the collection right now happens to be Sumo Wrestler, so a great collection of fragrances. Another new house that I first discovered last March at Printemps, and then I found the brand over at XERJOFF, is Nisaba, with a great story of interesting ingredients that they use for their fragrances. And there was a lavender fragrance, which I'm drawing the blank with the name now, that was so super delicious smelling. Lavender in that it's not necessarily fougere, but utilizing lavender in a beautiful way with a lot of green touches, which smelled super fantastic. So hopefully I'll report on this house as well. Their bottles are really nice, the presentation's really great, and so I'm looking forward to speaking about them very, very soon. Now, Pantheon Roma I have spoken about before in the past. I discovered 3 of their extracts, which are really great. R extract, M extract, and A extract. Really super strong fragrances. There are extrait concentrations, which means they're super long lasting fragrances. When I smell them, I liked R and M the best. A I don't remember too much about, but hopefully I'll get my hands on these 3 fragrances and report on them very soon. Are you guys familiar with Pantheon Roma? I've done some videos like 5 years ago perhaps, and I've done a video with the owner of the brand, which is also somehow connected to Profumum Roma, and so this is Pantheon Roma, and then there's Profumum Roma. Map of the Heart was another house I visited with, and they have a new fragrance called Abundance V8. I believe it's the 8th fragrance in the collection, and I've done some videos on the house in the past. I haven't done anything recently, so hopefully I'll circle back and do some more videos on this house as well. They have these beautiful bottles that are very heart-shaped bottles. The only thing that's a little complicated with Map of the Heart is that the bottles don't sit up straight, so they have to lay flat like some of the Mugler Angel bottles, the star bottles. Obvious Parfums has a fragrance that's super delicious. This is such an underrated house. Un Été, I believe it's a tea fragrance from what I remember smelling, and I believe that it is a tea fragrance actually, but I think it's utilizing mate or matcha from what I remember correctly. But man, it smelled so good, and hopefully I can report on this one more further when the fragrance actually launches here. But I think it's a very underrated house. They have really great fragrances. Their fig is really yummy. Their verbena is super delicious. Their oud launched, I think launched last year, I believe. Yeah, I think that was pretty good as well, but really a fan of their bois, and then of course their musk, and so the orange blossom, the rose. They're very easy wearable fragrances, and I believe you can layer the fragrances together to intensify and make more complex and things like that. So Gravel is a house that I've spoken about on the channel before. They have 2 new fragrances, Hazel and Evolution. Hazel is super fantastic smelling. Really love Hazel. It's a fig fragrance. Evolution I can't remember much about. Sadly, for some reason I skipped it. I only went to Hazel because it was so good, and so hopefully I'll report on Hazel further in the near future. And then I discovered a brand called Spiritum. And Spiritum, I had met the owner of the brand in 2019 in Paris, and then he had contacted me and told me that he's launching a new brand. Man, he launched a brand. It's this brand that has a ton of fragrances, and then while I met him and went over the brand at or during XERJOFF, he mentioned he's opening up a store as well. So I believe his store is now open in Paris. So when I go there in September, hopefully I'll go and visit. But I sampled a bunch of the fragrances, and my favorite, there's like 10 I believe, maybe 9 or 10, but I liked number 1, number 5, number 6, and number 8. Those are my favorites from the line, so hopefully I'll dig into them further and then also report back about this house very, very soon. I got to meet the folks behind Welton. It's a brand that I remember from a long time ago, but I never really embraced the brand. Always they were busy when I went to Esxence, so thankfully I caught them at a time when nobody was there, and they went through the whole entire collection, and I think they had some really nice wearable fragrances, and hopefully I'll circle back to some of their fragrances and report back about them as well. Now, I mentioned Andreas Wilhelm for Père Noir. He has his own brand called Perfume Sucks. Interesting also, I got to see Andreas Wilhelm. He won an award at the Art and Olfaction Awards while I was in LA, so I got to see him in Esxence and also in LA. But he has four fragrances he had launched. It was X Sasha Frolova, and then there's also Flash 0021, Fuel 0987, and Wealth 4181. Are you guys familiar with Perfume Sucks? I think it's a really fun concept brand. I think I have something up here. I believe this it's a hand perfume right here, but this is something that I had acquired back in a couple years ago. But he's got these 4 new fragrances here that are definitely worth checking out. If you're familiar with Andreas Wilhelm, let me know. But he does a lot of fragrances for some other brands as well, so definitely a brand to look out for. But another great fragrance that I discovered from a house that I haven't spoken about, but I discovered the house last year during Pitti, and I visited the house this year during Esxence, Renier. Are you familiar with Renier? Do you know Kisses Rain? I smelled Kisses Rain, instantly loved it. Really, really delicious fragrance. They had a few other fragrances that I liked, but Kisses Rain was the one that really won me over, and I can't stop thinking about it, about that fragrance, how beautiful it is and how great it smelled and how much I want to wear it. So I'm definitely going to be digging into this house further when the time comes and I can get my hands on these fragrances, but I can't find any of their fragrances here in the States. I don't know who sells them, but a wonderful, wonderful fragrance, Kisses Rain, from a brand I'm not too familiar with. So hopefully I'll dig into this house further, but let me know if you're familiar with this house and you're a fan of these fragrances. I'd like to find out. And also, there's a brand called Belle Rebel from the UK, I believe in London, and I've spoken about this house in the past with 2 of their fragrances, but they have launched this really beautiful green fragrance focusing on peas, this vegetable that you can eat. This fragrance smells so unique and so special. Really loved it. It was very, very green and comes in a most beautiful green bottle that I really, really loved, and I can't wait to get my hands on it to report back further about this fragrance because it smelled really, really great. I believe Lucky Scent sells some of their fragrances, but definitely want to dig into And the Pea. It smells fantastic, guys. If you're into the idea of fragrances that smell like vegetables, you gotta try this one. Really, really great. And then finally, the last fragrance I smelled during Esxence, Comporta, this Portuguese brand called Comporta, and this fragrance is called Will. Really loved it, really. A brand new release created by Bertrand Duchaffoul and Stephanie Bacouche, but really fell in love with this one. It had these kind of molecular touches, very musky touches that smelled fantastic. So this is another fragrance that I'd like to get my nose on and discover and wear and report back to you guys. But that's a lot of fragrances, a lot of different houses. Probably some of them you haven't heard of before. Let me know which fragrances or houses sound great to you guys. What would you like for me to, report back on and review here on the channel? What sounds the best to you? So let me know, put a comment down below. But thank you so much for watching this very long video. I know it's very long, but of course, as I said, you can skip around with timestamps and only watch the sections that you want to watch. I know they're very quick little sections for each brand. Otherwise, it'll be much longer video. But I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.